War Thunder has inexplicably just decided that they're going to do anime. And here is my reaction to that. And it just, no. This gives me horrible memories of playing Attack Helicopter Simulator. Oh, God. Yeah, I almost feel like I'm too old to be watching this kind of stuff. And if you're into this kind of stuff, well, War Thunder has a new collaboration with a game that it owns as its own IP. And this is the kind of thing you couldn't expect. Skins, decals, anime body pillows, the works. And I'm just not really into it, especially when they just added Attack the D-Point joke. And if you really want this kind of stuff, there is a link in the description, at the top of the description and in the pinned comments, where you can get 3% off your anime, whatever it is. And I have no real words. First of all, let's talk about the premise and why this is a thing, and also talk about a bit of history about online video games, and also the historical context of pinups and their use in a wartime scenario. War Thunder, though, is tapping into a market which is relatively unknown to it in its own self, and then Gaijin decides to build a completely new IP, their own content, and implement it as a crossover with the main game, that being War Thunder. In the short term, you can actually acquire some premium packs where you can grab a Abrams, a T-80 or a Leopard 2 dressed up in what some might consider absolutely foul and disgusting, and I'm not really sure what to make of this whole entire thing. On one hand, I understand that Gaijin needs to expand into new markets, and especially an unexplored market, but on the other hand, I don't know that this sort of thing is... it's a little bit taboo. And that's fine if you're into this kind of stuff, but me, not really. I just... When I play a war game, I don't want to shoot at cute girls, and that's weird. That's even a weird phrase to say. But I don't want to be shooting at anime pillows and various other things. At the moment, it's bad enough as is, and I'd rather just shoot at tanks. Thankfully, it's not on by default, but you still will see 3D decorators. But the point being, it's a bit of a weird one, this sort of whole endeavor, and it is exactly the same as any other premium vehicle. The voices don't do it for me. Nothing here. This is Goon Thunder. This isn't War Thunder. But anyway, anime aesthetics have become mainstream across gaming genres. You know, shooters, Overwatch 2 skins, Valorant, simulations like World of Warships, and also various RPGs. Collaborations with anime franchises and games, for example, Attack on Titan and Call of Duty, show how anime has become a global gaming aesthetic and not just a Japanese one. But it sort of led to games like Genshin Impact and Azure Lane, Blue Protocol, and Honkai Impact, centered around Western games being adopting anime influences in character design and storytelling. In War Thunder, however, anime-inspired comics remained better niche until this sort of event. Well, sort of a part of War Thunder's culture, especially in community-created content. If you go look at War Thunder Live, God forbid your eyes. But Gaijin occasionally revisits anime tie-ins during special events or celebrations or collaborations. And we had Strike Witches many, many moons ago, and there's also the DMM, which is a Japanese-only exclusive sort of magazine where you could get exclusive content in War Thunder, although I don't know if you can get any of that content any further now. During World War II, it was very popular for illustrations or photos of glamorous women to become an enormous morale booster for soldiers. The purpose was, well, designed to remind servicemen of home and hope and femininity and something beautiful and something normal amid the horrors of a war. Posters, magazines like Yank and Esquire, even Nose Art and Planes often featured idealized women. Now, the style was pretty cool. It was confident, playful, and usually very suggestive and rather explicit. But it became a nose art and military tradition, and pilots began painting these images across their various aircraft and vehicles. And some movie stars often stylized fantasy girls on their aircraft fuselages and noses, and this personalized their planes and was thought to bring luck or identity to crew. And every single nation on Earth had done that at least some point, and there are historical examples from most nations that participated in the Second World War that had this kind of thing. Now, how does that tie into War Thunder? Well, post-war Japan absorbed a huge amount of American pop culture during, including the pin-up ideal during the US occupation of 1945 to 1952. And early manga artists, the creator of Astro Boy, for example, Osamu Tezuka, I think I pronounced that incorrectly, were inspired by Western cartoon styles and glamorous illustrations. Now, while World War II pin-ups were about cheer and morale, anime involved that visual language into emotion and character archetypes. And so you can see exaggerated ideal beauty, like bigger eyes, emotional connection with the viewer, and use in art and identity to expression and all sorts of fantasy. Now, in terms of War Thunder and similar military-style games, as you see here, players often decorate their vehicles with anime-style decals in the same spirit that World War II nose art, just modernised. Today's pilots might paint Asuka from Evangelion or Azure Lane Ship Girl, and it's the same sort of cultural impulse. Personalise your machine, make it yours, bring a bit of charm and identity into the machinery of war. So anime in War Thunder isn't random, it is a direct descendant of a World War II pin-up culture filtered through 80 years of evolving art styles and cultural phenomena. Historically speaking, we didn't have jiggle physics on World War II aircraft, but World War II nose art was cheeky and extremely sort of different in the way that we sort of think. Modern anime can be sometimes feature a lot of sexualized imagery, and when players import such things, and it can cross a line of appropriateness to violate community guidelines, and this sort of crossover event just barely qualifies as potential for inappropriate or sexualized content, which, it does raise a bit of an alarm, but also commercialization concerns. I can guarantee you, a lot of you feel like anime collaborations and, are just marketing gimmicks that are, distract from the core development of the game, and it can be seen as cashing in on anime fans rather than focusing on new vehicles or gameplay improvements. And yeah, these 3 packs for the 3 most played nations, yeah, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. I don't know. What are your thoughts in the comments down below? Do let me know. I'm sort of two minds. Like, this is great if you have a decal link in the description down below for 3% off, by the way. Otherwise, it's a bit of a no-go and a bit of a sort of a weird white grey area. On one hand, I think it's perfectly fine. On the other, it's a bit of a risque move by the company, and I can see why they've basically gone out and done their own thing by, producing a game for themselves and then using that as the content in the collaboration crossover. Because again, Gaijin is a publisher. They have a plethora of games under their stewardship, and it's quite interesting to see the results of, people have been asking for this kind of thing for some time, and we've got plenty of body pillows now. There's plenty of other reasons why they're not going to necessarily not cash in on this. There's no reason why Anton doesn't need a new yacht, because, it's kind of interesting but also really strange, and I feel incredibly out of place talking about this kind of stuff. On the positives, it adds creativity, personalization, and a cultural crossover. It appeals to younger or anime-oriented players. It builds cross-community interest and keeps content fresh. On the other hand, this completely breaks realism and immersion, can look very out of place and immature, in some cases very overtly sexualized, can cause moderation and cultural clashes depending on the platform and social media that you're on, and does risk a commercial overreach. So it's a moral grey area as long as Gaijin's making money, right? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I think the general thought of the community is that most players agree that anime in War Thunder is fine as long as it's tasteful and optional when kept to skins, decals, or themed events. As long as I don't have to look at it and, it adds depth and variety without undermining the aspects of the game that we like and enjoy, then that is perfectly fine. Thankfully, there is a setting in your options to turn off fictional skins. So if you leave that on, hopefully you don't have to see the skins themselves, but the anime profile pictures and the body pillows as decorators you probably still will see. But good news, you can shoot those with a machine gun and they'll fall off the opponent's tank. So you don't have to look at them for too long if you're creative about it, I suppose. Alright, that's it for me today. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's short look at, possibly one of the worst things I've ever laid my eyes on. On the other hand, you know, it's going to make Gaijin a lot of money, and I suppose that's what matters in the end. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Is this something that is just going to ruin War Thunder? Or has War Thunder gone too far with this? I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments down below. And keep it civilized as well. There's no point talking about this and not having a discussion. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.